Hello and welcome, dear aspirants. I'm Dr. Animesh, and this is a video lecture series for Project SATHEE. Today we are going to begin our discussion on criminal law. And today, before we begin with criminal law, we are going to discuss the concept of law. This is a very preliminary discussion since you are all law aspirants preparing for CLAT and ILAT and other competitive examinations of law. You must not have studied the basics, the legal methods paper that is generally taught in law school. So I'll give you a brief idea about how the law works. As I stated, my name is Animesh and I teach law at National University, Jabalpur. Beginning with our discussion today, topic is what is law? Now, to say that in this class we'll learn what law is a bit presumptuous. It's impossible to define law in certain terms. That is why you will not find definition of law per se. There are explanations of law. Law can be explained. It cannot be defined in precise terms. No one can say this is the precise definition of law. Law is very, very subjective, and it depends on the understanding of the individual about how they perceive law. Now, that being said, let's talk about some of the elements of law. We always discuss what is the subject matter of law, comparing with the things that you already know. First, take sciences. Now, we all see what is the subject matter of science. It is a study of natural things, like physics talks about matter, chemistry talks about chemicals, biology is living beings. So they have a specific area which they study in their subject. Geography studies the earth and how the climate works and everything. So sociology, political science, everything has their own domain. Economics is the study of money, scarcity, everything. You must have studied in your 10th, 12th classes and all. But what is the subject matter of law? Another question that we have to ponder before we go into this discussion is that why it takes at least 5 years to complete law. And this is a question sometimes my student asks me. He said, engineering is for 4 years. After 4 years, you get BTech. Even MBBS is precisely 4 and 4.5 years. Why law takes 5 years? At least if you do law after graduation, then it takes 6 years. So why 5-year course is there for law? What's so difficult in it? Obviously, people may perceive that studying sciences, engineering is difficult than law. But, and obviously law is supposed to be simple for people. Many times people say, okay, you have to read books and all, and it will be sufficient. But that is not very true. The law works in a very miraculous way. Law is actually the study of human behavior. The first box that I have created as human behavior. Law का subject matter है human behavior. मनुष्य कैसे behave करते हैं. And now why this is complicated? Why it takes a lot of time and maturity to actually understand how the law works is because human behavior is very much different from the subject matter of other sciences. Like I have something, I have a particular pen. Suppose I have a rock in my hand and I drop it. It will fall down. Why it will fall down? There is gravity, which is correct. But suppose if I drop that stone, but that with love and affection, still it will drop down. I'll throw it away, still it will drop down. And suppose if I throw throw a rock in India, it will fall down. If I will do the same in Australia, it will fall down. If I'll throw a rock today, it will fall down. If I'll throw a rock 50 years later, still it will have the same effect. Means the natural element, they behave in a very predictable way. All the sciences, they study natural things, and natural things, they behave in a very predictable way. You can make an assumption about how things are going to behave in a certain parameter. In similar situation, all physical elements behave similarly if they are subjected to exactly same condition. But human behavior is something that is very flexible. That is something which cannot be predicted very precisely. You cannot say that how two human beings will behave in a certain situation. And what conduct, what behavior is correct in one context may not be correct in another context. Suppose you are walking on the street, road पे चल रहे हैं हम, अचानक किसी के पैर पे हमारा पैर पड़ जाता है. What you will do? You'll say, sorry sir. Because it was accidental, the other person will say, okay, no problem, no issues. Walk cautiously or something like that. But if you go and you strike your leg on that person, या पैर उसके पैर पर मार देते हो जबरदस्ती, you do it with intent. Now there is a dispute. Other person will say, nah, how dare you? There will be a dispute. The pain that is felt by other person is same in both the cases. And one is accidental, other is intentional. But where it is accidental, other person will say, no problem, okay, fine, no issues. But when it is intentional, there will be a dispute. Means effect is the same, but humans behave differently. How I behave in India is not very similar to how a person's behave in Australia. What is acceptable in India may not be acceptable there. What is acceptable there may not be acceptable in India. What is acceptable today may not be acceptable 20 years later, 50 years later. So human behavior is flexible and ever changing, and that is subject matter of law. In law, we study human behavior. We study human behavior in the sense that we see how humans behave in a particular way. But that is one aspect of it. We study human behavior. There are other sciences which study human behavior, like psychology, psychiatrists. They study human behavior. But the object of law is to ensure that human behavior is regulated. See, we all are, man is a social animal, we say. Why we say social animals? Because just like other animals, we have instincts. We behave in an instinctive way. We have a particular instinct given to us by nature. But we are the only species who know how to regulate our instinct. And to regulate our instinct, there has to be some guidelines, some boundaries to your instinct. See, if I'll do everything that I want, then I'll cause trouble to everybody else. हर व्यक्ति अगर अपने मन की करेगा तो समाज में nobody will be safe, कोई सुरक्षित नहीं रहेगा. इसलिए हर व्यक्ति को अपने इंस्टिंक्ट को रेगुलेट करना पड़ता है. We have to regulate our instincts. We'll have to see that what I am doing and what I can't do and what I can't do, what I can do and what I can do. Correct? Vidhi or nishedh, do's and don'ts. That is something that is fundamental to law. Law provides do's and don'ts which regulates human behavior so as to make it acceptable or make it easier for people to stay in the society. So that is do's and don'ts, something that stops us from acting on our instincts. Like I'm going on a road and I see new iPhone in a shop. Now I might have an instinct that this is a very good thing. I just take it from the shopkeeper, who might be a very lean and thin and very not physically well-built guy. I am capable of just snatching the iPhone from him and going away. But I don't do that because I know there is law against it. If I do that, law will come after me. So law helped me control my instinct. So that is something that is the subject matter of law primary. So how a law actually works, then the second element comes into picture, that is government. Now the function of making law, providing or prescribing the do's and don'ts, is the function of the government. The question is why we are actually choosing a government. एक सरकार बना दी, उसे टैक्स भी दे रहे हैं, जो कह रहे हैं वो मान भी रहे हैं, जो कह दिया पार्लियामेंट ने वो हमको मानना पड़ेगा. क्यों मानना पड़ेगा? इसलिए मानना पड़ेगा because that government is the prescribing authority for do's and don'ts in the society. पार्लियामेंट बताएगी कि भाई ये करो और ये ना करो. ऑब्वियसली पार्लियामेंट हमें रिप्रेजेंट करती है, तो हम खुद को गवर्न कर रहे हैं. इट्स ऑब्वियसली वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट डेमोक्रेसी, बट even non-democratic setup, there is always a government. Unless and until there is a government or there is a ruler, there is a system of ruling. Somebody makes law and somebody has to follow it. If that system is not there, the law is not there. Law has to be enforced, and that is something that government does. That is what separates the government morality from law. Morality क्या है? ये करना चाहिए. then it's a should not. हमको ऐसा करना चाहिए, मैं करूं या ना करूं. सो करना चाहिए will not actually help us much. इसलिए आपको करना पड़ेगा. There is a must norm. Law is a must norm. It's not morality which is a should norm. करना चाहिए नहीं, करना पड़ेगा. आपको ऐसे ही ये करना पड़ेगा या नहीं करना पड़ेगा, that is something that is made by the government. और गवर्नमेंट के पास फिर उसको इन्फोर्स कराने के लिए क्या है? डंडा, sanction, power to actually enforce the law. That is something, that is a second primary feature of the law, that the law is backed by government sanction. यानी गवर्नमेंट का डंडा खड़ा है, उसके पीछे there is a enforcement authority. Law. So till now what we have studied, law is a set of rules and regulation. It is a set of rules and regulation which regulates human behavior, which is enforced, which is backed up by a powerful authority known as government. No, the form of law, that is third element, is rights and duties. Law provides rights and duties. Rights and duties, rights is obviously things you can do, and duties means things you have to do. Rights and duties can be defined in a way that right is something that is beneficial to you. Right is something that is beneficial to you. It's your interest. Interest is something beneficial to you, and right is something that is guaranteed by the government. If this is your right, like I have a right that nobody will take my property. I have a right that nobody will kill me. I have a right to life and liberty, and number of rights. I have a right to privacy, that if I am staying at my home, no one will come. So those are my rights. And every time a person has rights, there are some corresponding duties. तो जो मेरा राइट है कि मुझे कोई ना मारे, इसकी corresponding ड्यूटी भी होगी किसी पे. किसी का अधिकार है तो किसी का दायित्व भी है. जैसे कि अगर मेरा ये राइट है, if it's my right that nobody should harm me, at the same time it is duty of everyone else not to harm me. At the same time it's my duty to not harm anyone else, because that is that person's right. अगर मेरे पास ये राइट है कि मेरी प्रॉपर्टी मुझसे कोई न छीने, तो at the same time every other person has a duty to not to take away my property. So rights and duties are there. They are working in tandem. हर व्यक्ति का एक का अधिकार होगा, एक का कर्तव्य होगा. So always there is some authority that is responsible. Like fundamental rights. Why fundamental rights? Those are rights, the duty of which is on the government. सरकार स्टेट करेगी वो काम कि भाई मुझे राइट टू एजुकेशन है, तो सरकार की चिंता है मुझे पढ़ाएंगे कैसे. वो सरकारी स्कूल खोलेंगे, मिड डे मील भी खिलाएंगे, सब कुछ करेंगे. इसी तरीके से मैंने कॉन्ट्रैक्ट किया कि भाई मैं आपको 10 रुपए देता हूं, आप मुझे एक 10 रुपए का कोई सामान दो. तो मैंने आपको 10 रुपए दिए, तो अब मेरा राइट है कि आपसे सामान लेना, आपका ड्यूटी है मुझे सामान देने की. वही दैट्स हाउ राइट्स एंड वर्क्स, राइट्स एंड ड्यूटीज वर्क. सो दैट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट ऑफ लॉ. Lastly, what the law does, the primary function of law में सबसे एक important ये भी aspect है कि it resolves dispute. Suppose me and you disagree on a particular thing. Until and unless if our disagreement is something material, what is the way we can resolve the dispute? आज से 5000 साल पहले, 10,000 साल पहले जब लॉ नहीं था, तो हम लोग कहते हैं जंगल राज. जंगल राज means everybody who is mighty will prey on everybody who is weak. मेरे पास शक्ति है तो फिर मैं सही हूं ना. माइट इज राइट इज जंगल राज, एसेंस ऑफ जंगल राज. सो माइट इज राइट इज वेयर देयर इज नो सिस्टम ऑफ डिस्प्यूट रिजोल्यूशन. अगर झगड़ा हो गया मेरा आपका, मैं शक्तिशाली हूं तो आई विल प्रिवेल ओवर यू. देयर इज नो पॉइंट ऑफ बीइंग राइट और रॉन्ग इन अ जंगल राज. बट टुडे वी डू नॉट हैव दैट सिस्टम. वी हैव लॉ, एंड लॉ इज समथिंग दैट सिंपली चेंजेस दैट डायनेमिक. It does not say that whoever is mighty is right, but rather law क्या करता है? The one who is right will be mighty under the eyes of law. जो सत्य पे है वो शक्तिशाली है लॉ की नजर में. इसीलिए डिस्प्यूट रिजोल्यूशन लॉ का एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट फंक्शन है. सब रूल्स बना दिया हमने सब कुछ, बट झगड़ा हो गया अगर किसी का, तो उसको निपटाएगा कौन? That is why we have a whole judicial system, and that is product of law. That they are doing a very essential function of dispute resolution. तो लॉ का काम है ह्यूमन बिहेवियर को रेगुलेट करना. उस बिहेवियर को रेगुलेट करने के लिए कौन है? गवर्नमेंट है. और गवर्नमेंट क्या करती है? लॉज बनाती है जो कि हमारे राइट्स एंड ड्यूटीज को फिक्स करते हैं. These are the rights, these are the duties. And then lastly, once the rights and duties have been defined, if there is a dispute about कि किसका कौन सा राइट वायलेट हुआ, किसकी क्या ड्यूटी थी, तो हमारे पास एक डिस्प्यूट रिजोल्यूशन का मैकेनिज्म. तो डिस्प्यूट रिजोल्यूशन के मैकेनिज्म की तरफ हम देखते हैं. वी गो टू कोर्ट्स एंड वी ट्राई टू रिजॉल्व द डिस्प्यूट. Okay, so that is how law generally works in our country. The understanding that I have given you is a very rudimentary understanding. Law इससे बहुत ज़्यादा nuanced है. Law is way more nuanced, but nonetheless, I have tried to give you a basic understanding of it. Now, coming on to the brief history of law. Now, many people say that the law began in a very different way, but primarily, in ancient times, the laws का जो origin था ना, वो theological था इन द सेंस कि डिवाइन लॉ को लोग बड़ा मानते थे. ईश्वर का जो भी कहते थे कि ये कानून है वो किसने दिया, ईश्वर ने दिया. देयर आर पीपल हु क्लेम्ड कि भाई हमको मैं जो बता रहा हूं वो तुम्हें करना पड़ेगा क्योंकि ऐसा मुझे ईश्वर ने कहा. एंड यू विल फाइंड पैरेलल्स इन एवरी सिस्टम ना. देयर इज अ थियोलॉजिकल बैकिंग टू द लॉ. वो ये नहीं कहते, जो लॉ बनाते थे, जो सोसाइटी को रेगुलेट करते थे, वो ये कभी नहीं कहते थे कि ये लॉ मैंने बनाया है. वो कहते थे कि ये डिवाइन कमांडमेंट है, ईश्वर ने बताया. तो जब ईश्वर ने बताया है तो फिर मानना पड़ेगा. तो दैट वाज हाउ द लॉज, द वेरी प्रिमिटिव लॉज ओरिजिनेटेड. मोसेस के 10 कमांडमेंट्स हो, बाइबल हो, वेद हो, ये सब प्राइमरी सोर्सेस ऑफ लॉ. भारत में जो भी लॉज हैं, हमको पता है कि एंशिएंट जो लॉज हैं भारत के, वो सब के सब रिलीजियस नेचर के ही. स्मृतिज हो, श्रुतिज हो. मनुस्मृति क्या है? किसी किंग का बनाया लॉ नहीं है. दैट इज एक्चुअली थियोलॉजिकल लॉ. वो कहते हैं कि भाई वेदों के प्रमाण से हमने ये बनाया. दैट इज हाउ इट वर्क्स. सेकेंड फेज ऑफ लॉ आया वाज बाय किंग्स, रूल ऑफ मैन. पहला जो थियोलॉजिकल था दैट वाज रूल ऑफ गॉड प्रिज्यूमेबली. उसमें ईश्वर कानून बना रहे थे, सब लोग फॉलो कर रहे थे. फिर आया लॉ बाय किंग्स एंड मोनार्क्स. इसमें क्या हो गया, एक व्यक्ति लॉ के बियॉन्ड हो गया. यानी दिस वन पर्सन who said that I am the king, I am supreme authority, I am beyond law, and thereby I will say what the law is, and you have to follow. If you don't follow, I'll kill you and all, I'll punish you and all. So the law making authority was reserved in the hands of king or monarch, the person who was the ruler. So the rule of God, say we move on to rule of man. And finally, we, in the third stage of this process, we have reached to rule of law, or what we have democratic system. So what rule of law means? Rule of law simply means that law is supreme. Even those who make law are subject to those laws. Meaning thereby, simplest example के sense में, our parliament makes the law for us. Correct? Suppose parliament enacted BNS, Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, they recently enacted. Well and good. So whether the provisions of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita are applicable to the members of parliament or not? The answer is yes. Obviously, if the member of parliament commits murder, they'll go to jail as per BNS. They cannot say, see, I have made the law, so I am beyond law. No. Law is supreme. Even those who make the law are subject to those laws. There's no exemption. Prime Minister's salary is taxed. He makes the tax. Nirmala Sitharaman ji, the Honorable Finance Minister, she makes GSP rules. But suppose she buys a cup of coffee, will she pay GSP or not? The answer is yes, absolutely she'll have to pay. That is rule of law means. Everybody is equal in the eyes of law. Everybody has to follow law. Even if you are lawmaker, you are still subject to law. That is something rule of law means. And that is what we have democratic system. So we have progressed from divine law, theological system, in which the priest used to tell what the law is. Godman used to tell what the law is. कि भाई मुझे ईश्वर ने बात हुई है, मेरी बात हो गई है, यही law है. Then आए फिर राजा महाराजा आए. They started promulgating laws because I am the king by divine right. I am the king, so what I say is right. I am beyond law. You understand that? Even if king committed murder, it was not an offense because no law applies to the king. But today we have rule of law. Even those who make law are subordinate to it, are subject to the law itself. So that is how we understand it. So we have discussed a brief history of law. Now our primary discourse is about criminal law, which we'll discuss in the next class. So thank you so much. We'll in the next class we'll learn Introduction to Criminal Law. Thank you so much for being patient listeners. Please share your feedback with us. And again, thank you so much. Have a very nice day.